Pokemon is just the gateway into the furry fandom, and you can't change my mind otherwise. And before you even start, don't at me. We all saw the leaks from Game Freak, don't even try to deny it. Pokemon is just one of those games that you got into as a kid, either that or Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon Scarlet is the 9th generation in a long-standing series, and personally, it is my 4th Pokemon game I've ever played. This Pokemon title decided to completely reinvent itself from the ground up, and I have to give credit where credit is due in that they went and tried something that was completely different and not even remotely close to what they've done previously in the series. That is a lot more than what other game companies have done. Looking at you, Treyarch. From the Pokemon games I've played previously, being Crystal, Ruby, Brilliant Diamond, and now this one, this is honestly my favorite Pokemon title. While I may have grown up with Pokemon, I never really got into it as much as my friends did because I really just grew up poor and moved more than a military brat. Having to learn the matchups threw me for a loop because I always unga-bunga'd my way through the game completely head empty style. One of the biggest reasons I love this game is due to how free it feels. Pokemon games historically have been pretty restrictive and linear. Not that I mind those styles, but backtracking is not really just doing it for me, much like going outside and touching grass. Being able to pick which objective I do first is actually a refreshing change of pace. Another thing I love about this game is that you can choose your encounters with Pokemon, so no more forced encounters in tall grass, which just feels much better for the flow of the game, except for those tiny pieces of Pokemon that I just hate with all my... One of my biggest gripes with the Pokemon series was the lack of agency and encounters that always seemed to throw a monkey wrench into the flow of the game. Scarlet, and by extension Sword and Shield and Arceus, did away with the random encounters, allowing me to go with the flow of my own pace. But I never really grew up with Pokemon, and I only really played it casually the couple of games I did own. The amount of content available for you to run through will keep you occupied for hours, with the average being around 45 hours for the main game plus DLC. You can definitely get your money's worth of content in the game, especially if you're a completionist. But just like the people playing Pokemon in your local game store, something just doesn't smell right. Well, let's start with the obvious now. The game starts more than a Smash Pro player trying to beat the allegations. The performance is one of the biggest things holding this game back. In part on the original Switch, the poor frame rate aside, beyond pissing distance is bare bones graphically wise. The areas aren't marked for what level they are, so there's no clear indicators of what level the Pokemon are at, and other than you stumbling into a fight to get mollywopped harder than Johnny Somali in Korea. Then it's the type matchup matrix that you have to memorize that is absolutely daunting, especially if you're coming back after a long time. Let's not forget how the towns feel absolutely gutted as you cannot enter like 90% of the houses, period. But for all my whining, the game's actually just pretty fun to play. As I said, being able to completely have the freedom to complete the game as I like is a breath of fresh air. I applaud Game Freak and the developers in general for trying something new, and not everyone's going to get it right the first go around. And now that I was able to play Pokemon on the Switch too, honestly, it's a pretty fantastic game because the frame rate itself is at 60 FPS and it just feels absolutely crisp to play. The spawn distance has been increased significantly with Pokemon encounters and the game just feels stable. Overall, if you were to get a Switch 2, the gameplay is much more bearable as well. However, do note that it doesn't change the repeating textures and a lack of interior buildings in the game. The fact that the Switch 2 update was free is absolute class on Nintendo and Game Freak for Switch 2 owners. All in all, I'd give this game around a 7.0 on the Switch 1 and a solid 8 on the Switch 2. Just remember, there's no loss against the Pokemon, Batman.